Chapter 15, Kitsune Siblings. Now that Dr. Victor Kitsune was done with Ria and Lisa's education, he thought about how they would end up under Azrael's influence in spite of his education. And it seemed that no matter how much he educated someone, they still had the free will to use their education for evil. And fearing what Ria and Lisa would do with what they learned from him under King Azrael's influence, Dr. Kitsune thought should get as far away from Azrael's kingdom as possible, and immediately purchased a ticket to see his little sister Zenko. And even though he could live in Inari's palace, he thought it wouldn't be good for him to be surrounded by her hedonism given his Christian monasticism. And it was also a good idea to get away from Isis's degeneracy as well, given how toxic of a person she was, and having to put up with her every day living in King Azrael's palace. So, Dr. Kitsune packed up all his stuff using his ethereal magic to store his belongings in a pocket of the surreal plane so he wouldn't have to carry so many items. And when he got to the port city of King's Landing, he boarded a cruise ship to take to Zulshura for his connecting flight to Florida International Spaceport. And while he was sailing across the ocean, he decided to crack open his Bible in ancient Zulshuran and did the daily readings for the day, as was standard practice amongst the Zulshuran Universal Church. And when a tanuki aboard the ship saw this, he said to Victor, "I thought your kind were supposed to be degenerate Inari cultists." But rather than respond indignantly, Victor responded with gentleness and grace. "Well, I'm not one of them." But the tanuki just looked at Victor more confused. "Then I guess you're an exception to the rule." Before moving on with his day, Victor prayed that God would have mercy on that tanuki rather than wish him ill. And even though Dr. Kitsune could afford to eat fine dining aboard the cruise ship, he instead would dine on plain fruits and vegetables and slide the savings under the doors for other passengers aboard the ship he perceived to be less fortunate than himself. And after arriving in Zulshura, he would board a Malamute-class freighter with his belongings and make his way towards Florida International Spaceport. And when he had gotten to Florida, he went through the customs agency being screened by a pack of beagle enus. Dr. Kitsune then patiently watched as the beagle enus' noses twitched with their white-tipped tails upright and alert with their big floppy ears forward. And when the enus were done screening him, one of them grabbed a rubber stamp in his snow-white paw hand and stamped his passport, saying, "Welcome to America, old chap." Dr. Kitsune then took back his passport and made his way to his ticket agent to print his boarding pass to St. Paul, Minnesota. And once he boarded his flight and landed, he called his little sister Zenko, and she picked up the phone and answered, "Moshi." Victor then answered, "Moshi Moshi." Zenko then got excited over the phone and said, "Hey, I recognize that voice. How have you been all these years?" "I've been doing well and just wanted to let you know I'm coming by to pay you a visit. I thought I should see you after not seeing you for so long." "Well, this is unexpected, but I'm happy to hear it. I'll see you when you arrive at my apartment. See you then." Zenko then hung up as Victor caught a cab ride and made his way towards Zenko's apartment. A small reunion. While Zenko was in her Minnesota apartment by herself, she was staying nice and cozy by the fireplace, covering herself in her 7 golden foxtails, drinking cocoa while listening to some old stuff on the AM radio. It was already mentally taxing enough working a mind-numbing office job at the local factory, and it was about time she got some rest. But before she could take a nap, Dr. Kitsune came knocking on her door, and she grumbled off her comfy chair and heated a blanket and made her way to the front door. And when she saw it was her older brother, she jumped and latched herself onto him and then wrapped her 7 tails around his 9 tails. Victor then grabbed his little sister Zenko and gently put her down and said, "It's good to see my little sister again." Zenko then waved her tails excitedly and said, "I'm happy to see you. Let's just get back into my apartment. I'll warm something up for you." Zenko then went back into her apartment and turned on the stove and kettle with some jasmine tea heating up and grabbed some porcelain cups. Zenko then said to her big brother, "I always remembered you liked jasmine tea." Victor then smiled and felt warm with the scent of his favorite drink. "Just like living up to the meaning of your name. A good little fox. So, what made you move to Minnesota out of all places?" Zenko then sat down with her cocoa, taking another drink. "I came here to earn my 8th and 9th tail, and looking up to you and our sister Inari, you're a much better example to follow. But in order to learn humility from my 8th tail and spiritual life from my 9th tail, I had to leave the old country because all the monasteries were replaced with shopping malls, office buildings, and community centers. And even though I may be beginning to understand why you left to live in a Zulshurn Universal Church monastery for 200 years, I'm still curious what led you to make that decision. Why did you do that so many centuries ago? Victor then took a drink from his jasmine tea before answering. It was because I sought after better things than vanity and seeking a true spiritual life instead of indulging in sensual pleasures, falsely calling themselves spiritual. And it was the hedonism of our mother and the care I had for my immortal soul that I chose to live a life in the monastery, even if she sent men to persecute me on her behalf. That's understandable, especially with our long lifespans as kitsunes. There just comes a time when we become too old and are no longer satisfied with temporal pleasures of this world and seek greater things, and eternal things, or end in a pit of despair. And it's these reasons I have chosen to live the life I have. I looked beyond my temporal earthly existence because all that is left looking at this fallen world without Christ is the nihilistic notion that one lives life as meaningless. And it makes me wonder if someone truly has to die to experience hell, and if hell is more of a state of being than a physical place. Because if hell is eternal separation from God, then to willfully live a life of sin is to separate one's life from God, and therefore already be in hell, even if the body hasn't decayed yet. You know, you've always been the theologian in the family, and although I have read many of your theological works you wrote while a monastic against the heresies of Apollonius and Corvin, it wasn't your work on theology that convinced me to become a catechumen, but the way you lived your life. It is extremely uncommon for a kitsune to earn their 9th tail before the age of 800 years, and I couldn't describe it as anything less than miraculous. And knowing that you served Christ instead of Inari, I believed Christ had more power than Inari and did not need to have that reaffirmed by what happened to our mother in San Serwan Cathedral. I tried to warn her, but she persisted. And when she came to San Serwan Cathedral to defile the body of Christ, she died the moment she touched the spoon from the chalice. And from that moment, many in the Kitsune clan rejected Inari, believing Christ has authority above Inari. Victor then reminisced bittersweetly about his mother. I remember that moment. It also caused enough of a disturbance that the local bishops looked into the matter and had a small council over it. And although I did not rejoice in our mother dying because she came to defile the body of our Lord, what pains me more is to see many of our own people can no longer grow their 9th tail, let alone 5th, because they die of hedonism and pride long before then and are never able to embrace the fullness of personhood. And this lack of charity within the hearts of our people, fueled through rampant indifference, seems to have caused far more harm to their souls and bodies than any of the plagues we have experienced growing up throughout the Middle Ages. Zenko then let out a sigh of frustration, lowering her tails. And for this and many other reasons, I find myself seeking my 8th and 9th tail beyond our own country. It seems that ever since the 20th century and the disappearance of many of our monasteries, I had to seek the spiritual life and humility elsewhere, which are the two elements that make up the 8th and 9th tail. And even though I never thought to ask, what was your journey like earning your 8th and 9th tail? Victor then lowered his own tails and ears honestly. It was a hard and heavy cross to crucify my own pride and carnality, taking upwards of 200 years to overcome to the point that my 8th and 9th tail began to grow. I still remember the abbot's words that I was to love my enemies, and even commanded me to live within the enemy of the Kitsune clan, Tanuki clan, while I lived as a beggar selling baskets while not being allowed to use my Kitsune magic except in emergencies. But seeing them for who they truly were and the many humbling events that the monastery would put me through, I began to look inward, not the wooden beam, but the entire forest within both my eyes. And from it I learned humility, not to judge others in the ways only God is worthy to judge. And even though I have little hope our sister will turn from her hedonistic ways, I still pray that God may have mercy on her, because we are all in need of mercy. Zenko then perked her golden fox ears up earnestly before stating, And that's something I appreciate about you. You truly live what you believe and for it, even though you may not realize it. There's a remnant like us who still live within the Kitsune clan because of you. Victor then gestured towards his sister with one of his tails and asked, But apart from me being the theologian, how has your life been lately? Zenko then scrunched her face in frustration before loosening up. Well, let's just say I work a mind-numbing office job, but that ringtail sibling that live one door next to me are good company. It sure is nice to have them over, and it makes my life a lot less dull and monotonous. Victor then perked his fox ears forward and raised his tails curiously. That's good to hear. So what are they like? Zenko then tapped her muzzle with her claw on her paw hand while speaking. Buck's the oldest, and he's a pretty wholesome guy. Doesn't talk much about his past, but really cares about his little brother and sister. I've wondered who his parents are, but because he doesn't talk about them, says they were some pretty bad people. Victor then squinted his fluorescent cyan eyes towards his sister. By any chance do you know if he's a tanuki or related to the Ringtail crime syndicate? I've never thought about it, because I've stopped paying attention to the politics between the Kitsune and tanuki clans years ago. It wasn't good for me, but yes, Buck is a tanuki. Victor then put his paw hands together before nervously waving his tails back and forth ever so slightly. I don't want to make any assumptions or jump to conclusions about people I don't know, so out of curiosity, what else do you know about him? Zenko then tilted her head with the claw on her chin. Well, he did ask me to watch for a package being dropped off at his apartment one time and accidentally left the door unlocked. So, I went inside to lock it, but got curious, so I started looking around his apartment without any intention to take anything that wasn't mine. But then I found some really weird stuff that no one with regular salary could afford to buy, like magic-infused weapons and some really advanced technology that the general public doesn't have access to. The last time I saw him, he told me he was going on a trip to Kansas to help out an old friend with some things. However, his stuff is still here even though he's been gone for more than a month, and I doubt he has that much vacation time stored up with the kind of job he works. What kind of job does he work? Last time I checked, he works as a real estate agent with a valid real estate license. Victor then starts to fidget a little more. That seems a little odd given the normal hours and pay of a real estate agent. Unless you make a lot of money selling and redoing properties, there's no way you can afford magic-infused weapons. Or why would you even need one as opposed to a regular sidearm or shotgun combined with tanuki sense? Zenko then lifted her golden fur paw hands in the air. I don't know, maybe a friend or relative gave it to him. Zenko looked at her brother noticeably more fidgety before asking, Is something wrong? Victor then answered, Zenko, I might be getting a little concerned over nothing, but regular people don't buy or use magic-infused weapons. You're lucky if you can even find a gun store in the country with the most guns per capita that even sells parts to make magic-infused weapons, unless you know a magical weaponsmith personally. And even then, you need a highly magically conductive material like moonlight silver or fairy wood, which both take an incredibly high magical ability and skill to even make. What I'm saying here is that this Buck Tanuki is probably not a regular real estate agent, but likely a government agent most likely involved in keeping powerful magical creatures like us under control. I'm not sure if you know, but magic-infused weapons are primarily used against magical creatures where regular weapons would not suffice. Zenko then crossed her arms while doubtfully brushing her tails against the floor. So you're saying Buck was sent by the government to spy on me? What could I possibly have that they would be concerned about? It doesn't have to make sense in a lot of cases. But what about his siblings, if they even are his siblings? I want to know about them. Well, Buck's little brother Sonny is currently attending college to be a graphic designer and is staying in Buck's apartment, so I get to see him every day. His little sister Bonnie is still in high school, and I am tutoring her in her algebra class. And she says I do a better job teaching her math than her teacher. But the two are good kids and have a close-knit relationship with their big brother, who's taken care of them for as long as I've known them. And just then, Sonny returns from class and the day with Bonnie would ring Zenko's doorbell. Zenko then said while putting her finger on Victor's nose, Just a second. Zenko then put her cocoa down and opened the door and let the two Tanuki siblings in and said, Sonny, Bonnie, this is my big brother Victor. Bonnie then grabbed a chair and sat down and said, Nice to meet you. But rather than visit like Bonnie, Sonny was in a rush and said, Oh hey, I'd love to chat, but I have homework to do, before putting his gaming laptop on Zenko's kitchen table and getting started on homework. And after checking his email, he got an email from Buck that read, Hey Sonny, I know I said I was only going to be away for a couple of weeks, but it turns out my job has me away for possibly months at a time as duty calls. I know I'd rather spend time with you and help our little sister get through her classes, but unfortunately I can't be there. Please take care of our little sister, Sonny. I know it might be difficult, but she looks up to you. You're obviously a lot more capable than I am, since I couldn't even get into college. But hey, at least they assigned me a nice mission partner. She's a really nice lady, and so are her friends, and I have to say I've met the best wingman of all time. And funny enough, he's a Dragonborn too. And if you have anything that's too much for you to handle, don't be afraid to ask Zenko for help. She'll know what to do, and has been a big help already with our little sister. I wish you a good skill, Sonny, because even if you get bad luck, you still got your skills to back you up. And if you need help with some bills, I'm sending some cash to your account and already have the utility bills hooked up to my account, so no need to worry about that. You just worry about school and taking care of Bunny, alright? If you wanted me to, with my new mission partner, here's a picture of us hanging out in Kansas during the middle of the day after church down below. Best partner I could have asked for. Buck. Barney then opens up the image file and says out loud, "She's cute. Nice tail, too." Barney then asks, moving over to see Sonny's screen, "What are you looking at?" "Our big brother just sent me a picture of his mission partner, and to be honest, she's pretty cute. Way better looking than that butch Dragonborn lady he used to work with." Zenko laughed. "I guess I didn't know Buck was one of those agents, but I guess I do now." Sonny then said, "How could you not have known? We've known for a while now." Victor then spoke up. "By any chance do you know if he's ever been assigned to go after kitsunes? It's just that I know why certain agents are issued magic-infused weapons, and it's usually to go after powerful magical creatures, which includes kitsunes with 7 or more tails. I'm only asking for Zenko's sake." "Well, yeah, but it only happened once with him going after a heavily protogen-augmented kitsune, worst of the worst criminal, that escaped from Guantanamo ice shelf. From what he told me about this kitsune, it was brutal. Turned out his 9 tails weren't legit, but ripped from kitsune victims that were still alive, and surgically attached them to himself for magical power. But that's an exception to the rule. He normally gets contracted by the army to go capture or retrieve unusually powerful magical creatures that could potentially wreak havoc on population centers, like elder dragons and primordial protogens. You guys are small potatoes they would just send the regular police after, just with a few more magic suppression devices. As for why my brother would be assigned to a different kind of mission to look after some former fairy princess, I can only assume he had enough of his old Dragonborn partner and wanted a change of pace, as well as she ended up in a hospital and recovering from a serious injury. It's amazing she even survived a direct hit from an M8 Sheila tank, and lived." Victor then relaxed his cyan-tipped tails and ears before perking up again. "Did I hear correctly that he was sent to look after some former fairy princess?" "Yeah, what about it? What's her name?" "I don't know. Last time I heard about it, Buck told me her dad was a complete asshole that kicked her out of the house, just for asking some honest questions." "Did she have feathered wings, blonde hair, and lavender eyes?" Sonny then used his Tanuki illusion magic to make himself appear as if he was taking off sunglasses and stared into Victor's face. "Yes, do you know her or something?" Victor then looked away and lowered his tails and ears. "I partially raised her, although I did not witness her the truth like I should have, and I regretted it ever since." Sonny then looked at Victor confused before realizing who was standing before him. "Hold up. Don't tell me you're the Dr. Kitsune? The one that informed so many great rulers of the Tanuki and Kitsune clans and the ones that destroyed Apollonius's and Corvin's heresies?" Victor then faced Sonny. "Yes, that is my name, but I don't claim full responsibility for their actions." Sonny then looked wide-eyed, having heard the stories about him and just stared speechless. Victor then said, "You don't need to be speechless around me. I'm just a regular person." Sonny's ears then perked up. "No, seriously, your theological dissertations literally saved me in my theology course, where I had to cite primary sources." Victor then struggled not to let Sonny's words stroke his ego before saying, "I had not known my ponderings on spiritual matters would travel so far from where I lived, but I am grateful that it serves as a channel of grace for you. As for why I came all the way to Minnesota, I have simply come here to see my little sister, although I have been blessed to meet her neighbors." Sonny then started getting a little dramatic, bowing to Victor, reading him out and saying, "No, it is I who is blessed that you would come to my presence. Okay, you don't need to prostrate yourself before me, and it's getting really awkward." Sonny then puts himself back into a normal position as Victor asks, "By any chance do you know where in Kansas your brother is staying? I'd like to pay Titania a visit while in your country. I haven't seen her in so long, and I just want to see if she's okay and good friends. Sonny then looks surprised. Why, sure. I'll text him right now and see if I can guilt trip him knowing he misses me and my little sister a lot. Sonny then gets his phone out and types. Hey bro, I know you're staying in Kansas for work, but can you happen to tell me where you're staying at? My little sister and I are thinking about paying you a visit because we'll be away for so long. Buck then starts typing back. Hey Sonny, I appreciate the thought, but it's under wraps of security and I can't give you my exact location. But I'll try to come and visit when I can. How does that sound? Sonny then replies, That's fine, it's just I miss you, Buck. Buck then starts typing. Is everything okay, Sonny? When you talk like that, it makes me worry about you. Sonny starts typing. Everything's fine, and Zenko's being a big help here. I might even call her mommy if she wasn't 800 years old, but she treats us like a mother. I love you, bro. Buck then replies, I love you too, Sonny, and our sister. But I'm about to have dinner with my mission partner and wingman. So I'll talk to you later. But if you need anything, call me. And our little sister are the most important thing to me. And if there's anything you two need, I'll be there for you. Sonny then gives Victor a map showing where Buck's IP address from the Wi-Fi texting was from, with Victor saying, Thank you, but I'm going to spend a few weeks with my sister before I go see Titania. It was a pleasure to meet you. You too, medieval boomer. Did you know this? The name Zenko. According to legend, Zenko are a type of kitsune that are associated with Inari and the good foxes, that would often bring blessings and fortune. However, given the Christian context of Another World's fairy tale, this would have to be changed to make Zenko a servant of Christ. Oftentimes, Zenko Kitsune legend would say that they serve for the benefit of humanity rather than harm them. Moshi Moshi. This comes from a superstition that kitsunes, unless they have gained all 9 tails and other yokai, cannot say the phrase Moshi Moshi, hence why Victor can say it but Zenko can't. Image of Inari. This is a play on of Kitsune legends and the state that Inari is the kami of foxes and prosperity. Hence the leader of the Kitsune clan in Another World's fairy tale is called the image of Inari, as if they were Inari themselves. There's also the symbolism in the actions and names of these 3 Kitsune siblings, Victor, Zenko, and Inari. Inari is analogous of the love of money and putting wealth and prosperity above all else. Zenko represents the most common type of Christian who usually has a very ordinary life, and oftentimes manifests God's love in very ordinary ways without too many miracles, in contrast to Inari, who is only good insofar as it serves her interest to do so. And Victor is analogous to the saints of the past who have totally given their lives to God. There's even Saint Victor, who was a martyr, who was martyred for not offering a pinch of incense to Jupiter and the Roman Emperor. Likewise, Victor Kitsune, in the story lore-wise, would not offer a pinch of incense or praise to Inari after becoming a Christian, hence was persecuted by what could be considered by the emperor of the Kitsune clan, although he was never martyred. A reference to John Cassian. The part about Victor selling baskets and being humbled was a reference to a story from St. John Cassian about a prince who gave up his life as a prince to totally dedicate himself to Christ. However, I expanded upon this parallel with how it affected Victor as a person. Apollonius and Corvin in the lore avoiding lore dumps. According to the lore, Apollonius and Corvin Several were 2 notorious Christian heretics from the 1500s, who combined elements of Gnosticism with Christianity. They would eventually be put on trial for heresy at the Council of Zulshura, where they would be anathematized for heresy and refuse to recant their heresies after reproof. However, their heresy would find a stronghold in the Ceylonese province of Caroline and North Zulshura for centuries. However, it immediately failed to spread elsewhere. And although the followers of Corvin and Several are not Christians, they are often mistaken for Low Church Protestants having similar doctrines in appearance, but rejecting essential dogmas of the Christian faith like Christ having a full humanity and the resurrection, with the Corvinists and the followers of Apollonius believing the body to be inherently evil, as well as all physical matter. The Corvinists and Apolloniosites also rejected entire books and chapters of the Bible in the New and Old Testament, while also claiming Scripture as their authority, with the most notorious book they removed from the Bible being the Gospel of John for its anti-Gnostic passages. A reference to the Book of Acts. The part about the Kitsune clan taking all their shrines to Inari to the town square and burning them was a reference to Acts of the Apostles, when the people, after being converted, piled all their books of witchcraft and their idols and burned them worth 50,000 pieces of silver.